everybody, and welcome. This is Stress Awareness Day 2018, International Stress Awareness Day. And as you know, we are inviting to talk with experts from all over the world. And I am so honored today to speak to a very special Canadian woman named Deanne Barrett. And Deanne is the founder of Gratitude Works. She is a thought leader in parenting teenagers and a parent and teen resilience coach, which we all need. Now, her mission is to empower moms to grow with their teens through their challenges. And she has worked with thousands of teenagers, I believe, in Canadian schools, and uses this experience to inspire a global community, online community of moms. Now, I believe you also want them to tune out of the fear of not being good enough, which really interests me, and to tune into their heart's wisdom while they lead their children into adult life. I think you have an amazing job, Deanne, and I want to welcome you. Thank you so much for accepting to do the video with us. And do you want to say something about yourself that I didn't mention on here, or is this okay for you?
That's great. I'll just add a little bit of the personal touch. Danielle, thank you so much. I think addressing stress is one of the most important things that we can do, because when we're walking around in a cloud of overwhelm and stress, and that is running our lives, then we are not able to share the gifts that we have. And that's why I do this work every day. I taught high school students for over 14 years, and I could see how already they were cynical and jaded about the world, and like, why does it matter? Everything's already on the internet. Why should I put some effort into doing this? And my work became helping them see how their life mattered, not in some future, when you have a career, but as an adolescent, as a teenager, who they were and who they were for each other, the people in their family. That was the most important thing. And I can share the story a little bit later as we go, but it was stress that allowed me to kind of have a breakthrough and realize that my place was no longer in the classroom with students, but actually working with moms to help them learn how to support their teens so they could feel like their life had meaning right now in the middle of the messiness of the teenage years.
Yes. Oh, I understand. I had 3 teenagers myself, so I know exactly what you're saying, and I'm really excited to talk to you about this. Now, we all know that the theme of this year of the Stress Summit, the Belgian Online Stress Summit, is, does high tech cause high stress? Now, what is your first answer when I ask you that question?
I think that the technology that we live with today is makes one of the biggest differences in terms of parents and how they grew up, and teens and how they're living with technology. I don't have teenagers yet, but even when I was in high school, we were not using the internet. It was just starting to. When I was in university, we would maybe do some research or look through journals online, but now teens are living so much of their lives online. So this causes a stress in families when parents are saying to their teens, why do you need this so much? Can't you just live without it? And teens are saying, this is my social network. These are my friends. Like, I can't interact with them if I don't have this. And that causes a lot of conflict between parents and teens. But it actually is an opportunity for us to learn together how we can live well with this technology, because it also allows us to be inspired. It allows this summit to happen. It allows people in Belgium and people in Canada to connect.
Yes.
So it really takes some care in how we grow with our kids and how we talk to them about the technology and how we use it.
Yes, I totally agree. Now, what inspired you as a person to actually, work into this topic of stress with teens and moms? Because is it coming from first your personal experience, like you just said? Is it that's how it all started. And how did you evolve more and more from being a teacher to what you are today?
Yeah, so I started teaching when I was barely older than my students. I had graduated from university and was just 4 years older than many of my 18-year-old students. So I had to learn very quickly how to hold the attention of the room and have leadership with young people. And over time, I could see how there was so much suffering in many young people, not all, because many young people are inspired, enthusiastic, can imagine a world that's different and can take the steps to create positive change. But others felt really stuck, and they felt stuck doing school, like it was this holding cell until adulthood. And that's what inspired me to do my master's studies in that very field. How do we help teens to really know that their life has meaning and purpose, even when they feel like they're in this lockstep institutional system? So that really is work of the heart, and really helping connect teens with a sense of meaning and purpose. So then when I had my own children, I was even more inspired that this is what my work had to be for our future, for my adolescent students who I had loved, and for my own children. This is what I knew needed to happen for the future. And I know lots of teachers believe that as well. And so there are all sorts of pockets in education systems where teachers are inspiring their students. But I could also see, when I would meet with parents, this incredible fear. Fear that their kid is not going to graduate from high school in 3 years or 4 years. Fear that their kid is not going to get into a college. They're not going to have a career, that they're going to fail to launch from the home. And all of this fear was actually clouding their ability to see how capable their teen actually was. And I had the gift as a teacher of not having all the history of this person's childhood, but meeting them at 15 or 16 or 17 and seeing how capable they really were. And so I recognized that the work that I needed to do was in supporting moms. Now, I mentioned there was a stress component here too. The city that I live in has grown so much that when I started teaching years ago, I had maybe 25 students in a room.
Okay.
Now I was having 40 students in each class. And I was an English teacher, a literature teacher, so that meant I had to bring home all of these essays. And then I had 2 children of my own, so after putting my own kids to bed, I had a stack of papers that I had to mark. And I thought, this is craziness. And I just couldn't keep, as much as I thought, I just need to be more organized. I just need to, get time management strategies. I knew that wasn't the full picture, because really what I needed to do was not be in a position of assessing their writing, but really working with their hearts of what creates meaning and purpose for them.
And I believe, can I just ask you, because I saw in your work that you mentioned that stress, anxiety, and depression are of the highest concern in teens. Do you link that to the high technology as well?
Yeah, I think technology often gives us a false illusion that we are connected. And really it's so easy to look at a phone and send a text message and receive it, and we get lots of interaction, but we don't get that intimate connection. And teens really struggle with how to create connection in real time with live people, and how to care for each other. I remember I had a teacher, a cosmetology teacher, who helped students with hairdressing and manicures. She said, the biggest thing I have to teach now is small talk, because the students don't know, when people come in to have their hair done, how to start a conversation with them, because it's awkward. And so all of these little details help us recognize that a challenge for adolescents is, how do I reach out to other people? And why bother? There's an element too of why bother, but recognizing that the presence that you bring with your joy, with your enthusiasm, with your curiosity, changes the way people interact.
Mm.
And that is a really powerful lesson if we can understand it, that
I
who we are
totally.
and how we show up has power.
And I also read into your work that, you talk about that fear of not being good enough. When we see how high technology is actually almost promoting that fear, is almost, really accentuating that fear because we compare ourselves on social media. We are consistently, bombarded with, am I good enough? That one or that one is, from all over the world, we can see now how people do things. And it's not like before anymore when we just had our neighbors or our, it's become such a thing to compare yourself with others, to doubt yourself. That fear of not being good enough is actually also my base of my work with people, because for me, it is the biggest stress that one can experience. It's the base, of everything. If you don't feel good enough, it is a consistent stress. Do you agree?
Yes. Yeah, and helping our young people realize that what they see online is highly curated. It's like an art show. There's been teams of people that have put it together. If someone were to look at my Instagram feed, you don't see me frustrated. You don't see me, upset with my kids for not eating their dinner. You see the work that I've done, a beautiful nature walk I've been on. Everything looks lovely. You don't see the dirty dishes in my sink, right? Because it's highly curated and it is one view and it's what we want to show. It's like our best foot forward.
Yeah.
And when we can help teens to recognize that, then the hope is that they'll realize that everyone has failures. I just talked to a mom the other day who had listened to some of my work where I was sharing that I failed a final exam in high school, a math final exam. And the first time I tried to get my driver's license, I failed. And then this mom said, I was blown away that you had these failures because you're such a competent person now. And I thought, well, but when I was a teen, I was not as sophisticated in my understanding. I was unwilling to reach out for help. I hadn't learned a lot of those things yet. It was part of the learning curve. And I was also blown away that she was surprised that there had been failure, because I
Yeah.
think it's so important to recognize that if we're trying something that's important to us and stretching ourselves, then we're not going to get it right every time. And that is a valuable lesson for us to learn so that we can figure out, who are we and can we still be okay when we fail at something? And I think that's a lesson that teens are really struggling with, and parents are struggling to know how to support their teen through those failures, because it feels like there's no room for failure right now.
I agree. I agree totally. And how do you see evolving this whole thing? Because will high tech, because we all know that the automated society, the pressure, everything, artificial intelligence, it's only starting. So how do you see evolve that? How will that affect parents and teenagers in the future?
I am certain that the things that can be done by robotics and automation, those jobs will happen that way. I just saw an image of at SeaWorld, they used to have people who would sell the tickets, and now it's all automated. But that means that the human jobs become that much more human. The work that you and I do, working with people, their emotions, the human heart, that is still happening. And so the human jobs become more human, and we need people who understand how to be present, how to listen, how to really care for people and their hearts and our emotions. And that is so valuable. And those are the things we need to continue to carry on. We need to know how to tell our stories so that people can see themselves in a new way and know that they are not broken, but they are just unfinished and are in the middle of the messiness of their life and can keep going. So I also know that we have this big fear of comparison, but technology also allows us to be inspired. This is a time like no other where we can find inspiration. But it's recognizing that we need to use technology as a tool so that the technology isn't using us.
Mm. That's a big
You know,
one. That's a big one, I think.
I'll
Because
just share, when I go onto a platform like Facebook, I write a list. And if I don't physically write it down, I make a list in my mind of the things that I'm going to do there. I'm going to share this video. I'm going to check in with this person on Messenger, and then I'm getting off. Otherwise, I could put all my time into looking at cute videos of babies and wedding photos, and I could just pour myself into that. But I know that I have to be really focused and use it as a tool so that it's not pulling all of my time and energy into comparing myself to everyone else's life. So those are some key skills that parents and teachers can support teens with, to recognize how to use these things as a tool so it's not pulling away your time and energy into places where you don't want to go.
can you illustrate for me, from all the years that you've been working with teens, one stress factor that you can see, maybe a common denominator in teens? Is there one real big stress factor that you can, talk about?
Yeah, school. School is a big stress, and it's for many reasons. School is stressful because of, first of all, the artificial institutional lighting. And schools are starting to change, and they have more greenery, more natural things, but that is a difficult environment to be in for 6 hours every day. Then fill it full with people who have emotions, feelings, thoughts. Teens now are more sensitive to the energy around them than ever before. And so fill a building up with adolescents and all of the things that are going on. That's a lot of energy in a room. And then add in the social relationships and the constant maneuvering. The adolescent stage is about for adolescents understanding themselves apart from their family system, and then figuring out, where do I fit? And so there becomes so many levels of students figuring out where they fit, with whom they fit, who they are, who they're not. And that is really challenging. And then we have the academics. I was an academic English teacher, and for some students coming in, especially when it was English language, they would say, well, I speak English, so this course should be easy for me. And I'm saying this is about understanding literature and rich interpretation, and it takes some life experience. And so the academic challenge is there as well. And
Can I ask you,
often,
do you experience, because I think it's an interesting topic you mentioned it, do you experience that high technology at school itself is also taking, because aren't children now also learning on the computer more and having more, lessons or homework that they have to do online? And is that also a factor there?
it really depends on the schools and the school system. So one thing that can cause stress is students having to put away their phones in their backpack and saying, you need to be present to this lesson. It's not all happening there on your phone.
Yes.
So learning to focus and not be distracted is one element.
Yes.
It becomes sometimes an equity issue depending on the socioeconomic status of families. Some students can come with their own laptop from home, others can't. And so the question for teachers is, can you ask them to have all of their work done and typed out on a computer if you haven't given them some time and access to computers? Can we ask every student? I taught in public schools, so that was a question. What is reasonable to ask of students, and are we disadvantaging some who might not have the money for a computer at home?
Yes.
There are also many schools like Waldorf schools and many schools people who are in Silicon Valley in California, which is a hub of technology, actually send their kids to Waldorf schools and other schools that are low tech.
Yes.
Because they recognize that there are some modes of learning that cannot happen online with technology. We need to be present to other people, and we need to learn how to do it without the technology, and then learn it with the technology as one of many tools. So is technology adding stress in terms of education? Definitely when the technology, we have it, it crops up, people say, this is a great platform, we should use that. And teachers are trying to learn the new platforms, teach them to students, and then we lose some of the time and impact of the actual curriculum that we are teaching. So I think technology is adding new factors because we don't always stop to ask the question of, what's the impact of this technology? Do we have the time to do it well? Is this the right tool for this job? And often it's not, but we jump on it because it feels like we should be keeping up. And that's happening in education across the board.
And that happens in all ages. It's not just, when I see my mother of turning 82, she tries to be, with the grandchildren, WhatsApp, little pictures. She tries to follow, and it's a stress for her, to try to. So I think it's for all ages. But what I wanted to ask you too is, to the audience, or maybe from your point of view, you probably talk more to the parents in our audience. What would be your number one tip, Deanne, to prevent that technology is stressful? What tip would you give to the audience? If it would be just one sentence or one subject, what would you advise?
My advice is always to develop a culture in your family of having some tech-free time. So Danielle, when you and I had first when you contacted me over email, you kept getting my autoresponder that says, I am digitally detoxing. Over the summer, there was about a 2-week period where I did not have access to my phone, my computer. I had my phone if I needed to make a phone call or to check the weather, but that was all. And so those times are so important. And sometimes it's hard for parents to say, like, do I have to take my kid's phone away? Like, I don't want to have that fight. But there are lots of ways you can do it where it doesn't have to be a fight. I live near mountains where there is no cellular phone reception. So if you take your kids on a hike to the mountains and there's no cell reception, they just have to learn to interact.
Exactly.
Also, if you take them to a swimming pool, I'll just share briefly. I had a student in one of my classes, and he didn't really take the course very seriously. He would rather look cool with his friends, do things on his phone. But a couple of months later, I took my daughter for a swimming lesson, and he was the swim instructor. And he was in the water, couldn't have his phone. He was wonderful, sang silly songs with them, was fully present watching them in the water. So know that your teen can do it. Just create an environment where they cannot have their cell phone, and do that repeatedly. Take them to the beach, take them to the ocean, tell them this is a time without phones, we're going to leave them at home, and just spend time interacting with them. And that will be a gift. That will be a gift that will last for a very long time, because they'll learn they can live without it, and you'll have this time where things will bubble up that they may wish to share.
Yes, and I think it's also from a physiological point of view, to give the brain a break. With it makes sense in a lot of different ways. So thank you for that. And I can feel in your work that connection is something like sacred. I can feel that, and I totally agree. As a parent of 3, my oldest is 32 now and a father himself, but there's nothing more important than to teach your children, and as a family, to connect and to communicate and to say what we feel, what we want, what we need, and not just I found that so important. So thank you so much for, and detox, I think we can all use it from time to time, just have these detox moments. Now, Deanne, is there anything you would like to, is there one quote or one, I would almost say a word or something that you would like to finish off with this interview? Something that you really take, close to your heart?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do a lot of work of talking about the heart. My company, I called it Gratitude Works, because when we can see the positive, especially when we're looking at teenagers, teens often get a bad rap. The teenage stage gets a bad reputation, but if we can be grateful for the person we have in front of us, that can help us see the positive and be hopeful about them. And so I often say it's about loving our teens. And parents will say, well, of course I love them, but really understanding that love is a commitment, and it is a commitment to do things that are challenging because we know how worthwhile they are. So if that means spending time with a teen apart from technology is going to be a challenge, that is one way that you can love them with a really big love that is showing them that who they are matters.
Oh,
And who
I
they
love it.
are, yeah, yeah.
Shall we finish with who you are matters?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much for this interview. I think we could talk, more and more and more and keep on going, but let's just remind the audience that they can, review this interview. They can register for other interviews with all the other experts. This is all about the online stress summit for International Stress Awareness Day. Thank you, Deanne Barrett. Thank you so much for your contribution. I really appreciate it. And let's see what interview comes next. I'm not sure who the next expert is, but there's many more to come. So stay tuned. Bye bye. Thank you, Deanne. Bye bye.